good evening, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Black Talk Platform, where I am your host, Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins, and I am so happy to have you all here with me this evening. Come on in, come on in, come on in the room, because I have a very, very special guest here tonight. We are turning our lens back towards politics because politics have a huge effect on everything having to do with the Black community. And we don't want to be left on the sidelines. Correct? I know you agree. And so tonight I have a very special guest with me. And for some of you, this will be an introduction. For others, it will simply be a presentation. And we are so happy to have with us tonight Gregg Marcel Dixon, who is running for the Congressional Seat in South Carolina, 6th District, which is currently held by the majority whip of the House of Representatives, James Clyburn. But guess what? This night is strictly about the candidacy of Marcel Dixon. Welcome to Black Talk Platform, Marcel.
Hello, Dr. Deborah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to have you here. And I tell you why. I don't know, because you are very, very popular on Twitter, and that's really good because that is a great place to raise your social capital. Twitter is probably one of the best places. I tell people all the time, if you want to hear what's going on in the country, if you want to hear what's going on in the Black community, go to Twitter first. Don't turn on CNN, don't turn on MSNBC, Fox,
Right.
any of those. Go to Twitter. You will find out what's happening there. You posted something that at the time, because I had no knowledge of, which seemed to me as provocative. You were talking about the abject poverty in District 6. And I saw it and I tagged a friend and I said, oh my goodness, if this is true, this is a problem. And you were talking about the poverty and you responded back and said, it's absolutely true. And you pointed me towards the statistics. Thank you so much for doing that, because it caused me to zero in on what's happening with the Black community in District 6 in South Carolina. Why don't you tell me a little bit, as a resident of District 6, how has it been in your experience? But certainly, if people would go to your streaming website at the bottom, they will find out a lot about what's going on in District 6. Talk to us about what you've experienced since living there.
Well, first of all, I want to say that, yes, I'm running against Congressman Clyburn. He's been our elected representative for 30 years. Now, I'm a teacher. Just to put this in context, I get kids. I've taught elementary, middle, high school. I get kids who come to me several grade levels behind, emotional issues, behavioral issues, mental issues galore, and I'm given just 6 to 8 months to get them not just on grade level, but above. So I have to get them on grade level first and then get them above. Congressman Clyburn has had 30 years. Now, he inherited districts that were extremely impoverished, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no excuse why, after 30 years of having him as our representative, his district is the 6th poorest in the United States of America. Out of 435 before the redistricting, there are more districts now, but out of 435, his district is the 6th poorest. I've experienced this myself, but I've had relatives who have experienced it in ways that are far more profound, from not having running water, from having to use the restroom in buckets. Some of these conditions still exist in some areas, some of the far-flung areas of my district. There's an area called Sand Hills, which is right there by the Savannah River. It's extremely rural. When it rains there, people sometimes have to take boats to get out of their driveway.
Wow.
So the poverty here is in some aspects comparable to what you will see in some developing nations, or unfortunately, what you will not even see in some developing nations.
That's incredibly sad. And the reason that was the exact tweet that I'd seen, and the reason why it was so startling to me, and it perhaps shouldn't have been, is because here I'm in New York City, and one of those 6 top six districts is in my borough, the Bronx, and you'll hear Congressman Richie Torres talk about
Mhm.
the poor is probably the poorest, I believe, but for District 6 with here's a contrast. Richie Torres is new to Congress. He too inherited a very poverty-stricken district from his predecessor. He's brand new. So, of course, all eyes should be on him to see how he starts and how he finishes this first term. That's the example you just gave us, how you, as an educator, has to get the children up to the level they're supposed to be and then exceed that. And you're saying that in District 6 of South Carolina, the sixth poorest district in the nation, that hasn't happened in the last 30 years.
No, it has not. And people have like to make excuses for Congressman Clyburn. And I will say, again, I've never blamed him for the conditions here. You know, South Carolina is a very impoverished state. Ironically, it was once the richest state, and now it's one of the most impoverished. And we know why, because of the slave trade. South Carolina had the highest number of families that enslaved another human being, Black Americans. Okay. And shortly after the Civil War, South Carolina quickly became one of the most impoverished states and never quite recovered. And you
Mm-hmm.
can imagine South Carolina had one of the largest Black populations and still does of the United States of America. There were parts of South Carolina that were 90% Black. There are still some parts of South Carolina that are 60 to 70% Black. And when you think of Jim Crow and redlining that deprived our communities of resources that we should have had, obviously the poverty was deep. However, what I say to my students is if I know you've tried your best and you know you've tried your best, that is all for one can ask from you is to try your best. I
Okay.
look at Congressman Clyburn's record, and I'm Gullah Geechee. For those who don't know, that's Sea Island Creole. We are descendants of the rice-growing Africans that were in slavery. They came from a variety of different parts of the African continent and different civilizations. And because I'm in a subtropical region, in fact, you can probably hear the rain right now, and we get weather that is quite tropical for most of the year. The white enslavers could not deal with the malaria, the heat, the humidity, so they will go for the inland and leave the extremely large, very diverse Black population from different parts of the African continent here
Wow.
on the Sea Islands and the coastal plains, where escaping was pretty difficult because you had to go through snake, shark infested, alligator infested waters, whether that was the swamp, the marsh, or the ocean. A Creole culture developed, a mixture of the different African cultures and languages and practices and traditions and cuisines, along with the English culture that was brutally imposed upon us.
Mm-hmm.
We were sought because of our rice growing skills. And it was rice, not cotton, that was the original crop that made what is now the United States of America extremely wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Gullah Geechee people, we were known for having land by the coast and by the rivers. I'm still just a 6 minute drive from the river. But it used to be once upon a time we lived right on the river and the ocean. That's why the cuisine here of the coasts of South Carolina and Georgia is so richly seafood based.
Mm.
We have lost millions of acres of our property, and it still happens today. In November 2021, Congressman Clyburn wrote a bill for a group of Native Americans that's only 3,000 in number called the Catawba Native American. There's only like 3,000 of them here in South Carolina. He wrote a bill for them to get 20 acres of land. And the bill passed. And now they're constructing a multi-million-dollar casino. Now, here's some background information about the Catawba. They were one of the most brutal enslavers during the days of the slave trade. Not only that, they were slave catchers. They were so brutal that sometimes our people who were desperate to escape slavery had no sort of protection, would sometimes rather go back to the white enslavers. He writes a bill for them to get land, but he
Wow.
has not written a single piece of legislation for the Black South Carolinians, who are 1.5 to 2 million of the population of this state, to get back even a slice of the millions of acres that have been stolen from us, or to at least get compensated for them. So, like I tell my students, if you do your best and it doesn't work out, that's different, because a leader is not always what they are able to accomplish. A leader is a lot of times for what they fought to accomplish, even if they failed trying to do it. He has not even tried to do right by Black America. My
Okay.
platform is one where I'm going to write legislation to do right by Black America. When I say Black America, I'm not talking about Black immigrants. I'm talking about freedmen, those of us who are descendants of those emancipated at the end of the Civil War.
Okay. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but we need to unpack that. Because see, I understand us as a people. We like symbols. We like the illusion of representation. And
Yes.
because that representation may look like you and I, we think that we've gotten a win. But what
Uh-huh.
you just said is that the elder statesman who is in Congress for the last 30 years, and what I understand is that his district is at least 56% Black.
It's going down a little, but you know the census and the
The
count says
census.
so it's
Yeah.
between 50 to 56%
Still
Black.
majority. Still majority
Still
Black.
majority, yes.
And what you're saying is that in 30 years, and correct me if I'm wrong, there has been no Black equity bill proposed, drafted, presented by Congressman Clyburn to
No,
Congress.
no. And people say to me, well, what do you expect? The other 6 districts of South Carolina are all Republican hell. And I say to them, he knew that when he signed up for the job, okay? And then they say, well, what do you expect? You know, he probably wouldn't get the votes. A leader is for what you fight to accomplish. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't hold protests and go marching because he knew the civil rights legislation was going to come about. He fought to make it happen. You don't make excuses, okay? If I tell people in South Carolina District 6, if you want someone for whom you have to make excuses, then keep voting for Clyburn. We're going to keep getting what we're getting. We're going to keep having the worst schools. We're going to keep having the highest levels of foreclosures. Black Americans own less homes now than we did during Jim Crow. 14 million acres of our land has been stolen. 14 million to 50 million. And 80% of that has happened since 1959, 1969. If you want to keep making excuses while we get nothing, go ahead. But if you want to make a difference, vote for me. And looking at Congressman Clyburn's record, he has not written a single piece of legislation that can address these specific issues that are specific to Black Americans. What he says, and I want to mention this, is that, oh, our issues get addressed through policies that are for everyone, like the Affordable Health Care Act that made healthcare supposedly more accessible to everyone, is going to address the issues of Black Americans dealing with medical anti-Blackness. That has not happened. That's like saying that once upon a time they had Jim Crow and Black Americans would not get treated in certain hospitals. Now we can, but it has done us no good, because Black women, when it comes to childbirth, are still 5 times more likely to die giving birth than a white woman. They have a higher rate of child mortality than women in poorer nations like Mexico. Black Americans are far less likely to have their limbs amputated. In some parts of South Carolina, they're calling it an epidemic of Black Americans who are having their limbs chopped off instead of getting the type of treatment they need. So what good did making something accessible do if you're not treating these specific issues that are impacting Black Americans? He has not written legislation to do that.
I'm not even happy with the reasoning behind it, because it doesn't even line up with the bill that you said he just got passed. And I remember reading about the bill either on your page or just as news was unfolding about the Native Americans. That doesn't align with that, because if that were the case, if that was his reasoning, then why not also for them, right? Why not also for them? Let the bigger bills, the general bills, give them property, give them land.
Exactly.
Right. That doesn't even add up. But you know what? The problem is not as much him as the people who continue to reelect him.
You're
Would you
right.
agree?
Oh, I definitely agree. And look, I am running on a platform of one, what Congressman Clyburn has failed to do for us. And not, I shouldn't even say he's failed to do it. He hasn't even attempted to do it. Every congressman, I don't care if you are one Democrat in a House and Senate filled with Republicans, you still have the ability to write and propose legislation. I remember when Pelosi, Schumer, and Trump were all in that room, and Trump was saying something wasn't going to pass, and Pelosi was like, well, you got to write the legislation. You got to push legislation forward. That's what you do. That's how you get things done. Well, if that's the case for Trump, who's a president, and he was saying that the Republicans weren't putting legislation forward, then that's also true in the case of Clyburn. You don't say it won't pass. You can't say you're going to lose a fight that you never even stepped in the ring to take up the challenge. Right. Every congressman and congresswoman has the ability to write legislation. Like I said again, it's not about what he has not been able to get done in as much as it's about what he has not even tried to do. But he is supporting legislation specifically for other groups. He supported the anti-Asian American hate bill. They like to say that does not specify Asian Americans, but that's a lie. If you read the legislative text, it specifies Asian Americans. That was specifically for them. He supported it. He sponsored it, co-sponsored it. He also is now supporting this bill called New Deal for New Americans Act that would give 11 to 20 million illegal immigrants federal class protected status. They will not be able to be deported. But not just that, they will get federal resources in housing, in jobs, in education. He supports that specifically for them. They're not getting told a rising tide lifts all boats. We are the only ones that gets that. And like you just mentioned, the second part, what he hasn't done, what I'm going to do, but how we have been complicit in our own degradation. Because it is not, Clyburn's not getting there on his own. He's getting there because people are voting for him.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, viewers tonight. Welcome. Thank you all. And be interactive. I follow Marcel, and he is very interactive. If you have questions, listen. You don't have to live in South Carolina. I thought it was very important to bring him on because, time out for the status quo. It's just time out. It's time out. I have some personal views, and I don't even live in South Carolina, but like you, Rodney, my friend Rodney is saying he doesn't feel satisfied with the rhetoric that comes out of Congressman Clyburn's mouth. And it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous, some of the rhetoric that I've heard. And the one that I always harp on, and you may speak to it if you desire, but I'm not trying to craft your words. He was being interviewed. I heard him being interviewed. This was when Senator Tim Scott, your senator, and Senator Cory Booker were feverishly trying to work to get a bill that the Republicans would accept for the George Floyd in Policing Act. Congressman Clyburn went on an interview. I don't know how many. I saw him on this one, who, while they're in the throes of negotiation, remember, that's the upper house. House of Representatives is the lower house.
That's right.
But his power is really dangerous because in that interview, they asked him about the negotiations going on and was qualified immunity an issue. Remember. And what was his response? And I am paraphrasing. It's not a deal breaker. The next thing you heard that, right? The next thing you hear, the whole negotiations break down. And shortly after that, anti-Asian hate bill is almost unanimously passed. He killed the bill, if you ask me. He killed the bill. Tell me, Marcel, how you feel. But that's your whole state. That was your state's Congress, your state, United States senator working with New Jersey state, United States senator to try to get something passed for us. Talk about that as a Black man.
When it comes to Black Americans, Mr. Clyburn has shown there is no deal breaker for him. And I keep trying to let us show us that and help us understand that. Listen, y'all, we saw George Floyd have the life suffocated out of him in the streets. We saw that beautiful child, Tamir Rice, gunned down for playing with a toy gun in the daytime in a state where it's legal to have a real gun shown, okay, and out, okay? Ohio is an open carry state.
Yep.
I have already said this, and I'm going to say it again. We own less homes now than our people did during Jim Crow. We've lost 14 million of the 15 million acres of land we once amassed. Our net worth is heading to zero. 20% of black families are already at a negative net worth. And that heading to zero, that was projected before COVID-19. COVID-19 has come along and wiped out 50% of black businesses. We might already be at a net worth. Do you see anyone from the Congressional Black Caucus knocking themselves over to try to pass legislation specifically for us? No, they're trying to make illegals citizens right now. They are trying to do, they were talking about making bathrooms unisex for trans people. Okay, all fine and good. But where are they dealing with the issue, the original sin, as everybody wants to call it, of the United States of America? And that is government-sanctioned anti-black racism. You see, there is no deal breaker for him. He won't go and stand his square for us. But look, speaking of the anti-aging bill, let's talk about how that came to be. You have Senator Tammy Duckworth and Senator, I cannot remember her first name, so I'm sorry, but Senator Hirono, the only two Asian people in Congress, they stood their ground and they said until something was done, no legislation would get passed them. They stood their square for their people.
That's right.
And they were not afraid to say that was their people. And Asian Americans, after 2 weeks of hate crimes, got an anti-hate bill specifically for them. Here we are as Black Americans, I call us freemen, 500 years later, we still don't have one for us. They're trying to pass that anti-lynching bill as something specifically for us. We all know that is a lie, because if you read the legislation, it does not specify Black Americans. And I want to remind people, when I say Black, I am talking about freemen. There is never a deal breaker for us. He is not going to stand his square for us. What he should have done is what I'm going to do. Qualified immunity needs to be repealed, okay? But to me, that's the minimum. That's the floor. That ain't the ceiling.
I agree.
If you hurt or, God forbid, murder someone in my family and you're an officer and you were charged with protecting them and your use of lethal force was unjustifiable, I want to do more than just sue you. I want you in prison. I want you rotted in prison. And if it warrants it, I want you to get the death penalty. So forget qualified immunity. What we have to do is what I do, what I'm proposing to do on my website, on marcelforcongress.com. I say that I'm going to make a push to amend the Constitution. There's a constitutional limit to officers, police officers' use of force. It says they cannot knowingly deprive someone to their pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. We have to replace knowingly with recklessly, because if you say knowingly, it's very hard to prove intent. I'm no lawyer, but everyone knows that it's hard to prove intent. But you can prove when someone is being reckless. Reckless driving is a charge that people have been slapped with. Okay, you probably didn't intend to cause an accident. You probably didn't intend to hurt anyone, but you should have known better because you had a license. That means you were entrusted with the responsibility of being a responsible driver. Okay, I'm buffering. Sorry, I think it's something about use
let me
of
let
force.
him know. Marcel is in a storm area and he's buffering a little bit, so bear with us. He's still here and he's trying to talk through it. We all know about the buffer. It's not gone. So go ahead, Marcel.
But even in clear weather, though, the broadband in my district is awful. So even if it was sunny outside, it will still be hard. But yeah, I was just saying how we need to amend the Constitution from saying knowingly depriving someone of their life, their liberty, pursuit of happiness. The language doesn't say that specifically, but it says something to that extent, to saying recklessly. Because if an officer uses lethal force and they hurt, maim, or God forbid, kill someone, and it was unjustifiable, it's hard to prove that they knew they were going to deprive that person of it, but you can prove that they recklessly did it. That will be a game changer. You see, he doesn't stand on his square for us. He easily concedes, and that's when he puts up any fight for us to begin with, which he rarely does.
It's a painful reality because he has a lot of can I use the word co-conspirators, and those co-conspirators are the voters. The voters are the co-conspirators because
Yes,
we like to have those photo ops. We like to say
yes.
that our congressperson is the majority whip of the United States House of Representatives. That gives us a sense of something, but we get nothing in actuality from him or collectively the CBC.
You know what's funny? You don't even have to say majority whip. They just we get enamored with blackness. Now you won't meet a person more pro-black than I, but
Mhm.
you know what? Like Fannie Lou Hamer said, all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
That's right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Fannie Lou Hamer said it best. Okay, I don't care if you're a black face, but you are passing policies to give more resources to illegal immigrants who the studies have shown that the higher the level of immigration, whether illegal or legal,
Mhm.
it's increased the loss of wages for black men especially by over 60%,
Wow.
incarceration by black men by 25%, loss of jobs by black men by 30%. Now, Republicans and Democrats have both investigated the matter.
Mhm.
Now, they disagree to the extent to which immigration has a detrimental impact on the black American community, but all entities, whether it's a conservative or liberal, they all have resulted in showing that immigration negatively impacts the black American community. Yet here he is voting for that. And I talk to some people in my district, especially the older people who have children, grandchildren, great grandchildren who can't find jobs, okay, who can't get into school, who can't get resources that our people should be the first in line to receive, but they
Mhm.
see illegal immigrants getting them. And how are you okay with that? How are you okay voting for a congressman who is voting to bring more of that here? We have lost our land here. A lot of people have lost their land to tax default.
Yeah.
That's not surprising when you think about the fact that which other group in this country worked for 260 years building the infrastructure of this country, generating the wealth of this country, and fighting for this country, but not getting a dime for it, being lynched just for being the color of their skin, building Wall Street that, had they been allowed to continue, would have made New York City look like a one stoplight town, but were burnt to the ground. Not just one, not just two, not just three, not just four, not five, but over 50 Black Wall Streets, prosperous towns, and cities were burnt to the ground.
Yeah.
How many trillions of dollars have we lost? So when you see our people who cannot afford to keep land that has been in their family, such as my family has had land in our family since the 1800s, and you see illegal immigrants buying that property and developing it, how are you okay voting for a person who wants to bring more people here to replace you, to give them more resources to take from you, what he's never written one single bill to help you be able to keep? How are you okay with that?
Oh my goodness, this is so painful. So listen,
It's infuriating.
it is. It really is. It really, really is, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have Marcel on tonight, everyone. We need to know, and for those of you who are watching, please, please, it's not about this show, right? This is about the information that is being shared because every politician or candidate has a platform on which they run. For South Carolinians who have to vote in District 12 for Congress, you need to look at what the congressman is running on. Incumbents are different from their opponents in that they have a record that they can point to. What Marcel is saying is that as it relates to the cause of Black people, who are the majority of people in this congressional district, the incumbent has come up short over the 30 years, perhaps throughout the entire time, but certainly more recently. Let's talk about your campaign agenda. I'm just going to name them, and then you can pick up and share with our audience where you desire. These are the 4 points that I found on your website. A better deal for Black America. Who's not for that if you're Black? We need a better deal.
You'll
We're
be
not faring
surprised.
very well. I know. I'm going to let you get into it. Better transportation. And that's really critical because most of us, if not all Black Americans, either lived through when highways were being built directly through our thriving communities, and those communities went away. The third is better education. Well, we already know about the education system, and even here in New York City, the state sends fewer dollars to New York City than the other counties throughout the state. That's no different in South Carolina, but the impact may be worse for the students there. And finally, a better plan for thriving communities. Let's start with the first one, a better deal for Black America. Let's talk about that because Black people are my heart. We are Black, and I'm about us. Talk to us about your plan.
Well, that is the centerpiece of my candidacy. If I was not going to run in that, I was not going to run at all. My campaign slogan is repair Black America to fix America. Mm-hmm. It's not fix America to repair Black America. No, because everyone's been trying to fix America while not repairing the damage that was inflicted by the federal government on Black America. And that's why we ain't fixed it yet. Mm-hmm. So my better deal for Black America, the reason I named it that is because what a lot of us don't realize is the so-called New Deal that a lot of us want to give Roosevelt credit for, it did not benefit Black Americans. We were excluded from every initiative of the New Deal. Even though it was not necessarily done de jure, it was done by default, meaning it was set up in a sense that even though they didn't say leave the Blacks out, they arranged it to where we would be left out and they knew what they were doing.
Absolutely.
This country never gave us a good deal to begin with. Now I'm proposing one. So my better deal for Black America is about my reparations platform. Reparations is not, and I always go through this because, you know, there are white and Black people out there who will spread lies. It's not a payment from any citizen. There is no white person around who can afford to pay the debt that this country owes to Black Americans. And really, this whole country couldn't, because if we was asking for the full payment, I know some people may have different opinions of her, but there's one quote that Yvette Carnell says. She says that any amount we come up with will be a discount, because if we were to ask for the full amount, we will be getting the whole country. So there's no that any citizen can pay. So it doesn't come from white Americans. It comes from the federal government. The federal government can't afford it because the United States is a monetary sovereign that can never run out of money. It's not indebted to any other country. So direct monetary payments to Black Americans who are legislatively called freedmen. That's what we are called in Congress. The Freedmen Bureau Acts were passed in 1865 and 1866 and referred to those emancipated from slavery and their descendants as freedmen. If you are a freedman and that is your lineage, you will receive direct monetary payments. That's number one. Two, federal class protected status. They're trying to do that for illegals right now to protect them from being deported, give them special access to resources for jobs and housing and healthcare and education. That should go to us. The same way Native Americans have federal land where they can go and live and they're tax exempt. We as Black Americans, freemen, should have that much more and then some. So my plan has for us to be apportioned federal land in all 50 states, because Abraham Lincoln said, if it wasn't for the Negro, the Union would have lost the war. There would have been no America. We would have been living in the Confederacy right now as we speak. So we deserve federal proportionment of property throughout all 50 states. But we will have freedmen, post offices, hospitals, banks, and schools. We also deserve that we have policies that when it says freedmen, it's only for us. Tax exemption and special protections that will follow us no matter where we are. It's also going to include justice for land theft. Now, the details for that is going to be announced on April 18th.
Okay.
That's Reparations Day. I want y'all to mark that. Start tweeting that National Reparations Day or Reparations Day. Well, I'm going to give the full details of my plan, but there has to be justice for the fact that most lynchings were not about white women lying about black men being inappropriate with them. That was a cause, but the number one cause of lynching was theft of black land, y'all. The number one cause of lynching. But you also missed something else, Dr. Deborah, the FHA, the Federal Housing Authority, how they planned. They literally wrote down how they wanted to destroy prosperous black communities by putting railroad tracks through them, highways through them. Okay. Then there's heirs property. For those who are, I see Dr. Robbie Akhir in the chat room. She's from Charleston. She's Gullah She has a mind, so she knows heirs property. But those who don't know, heirs property is a system where the property owner doesn't leave a will, so no one inherits the property. Everyone gets a share of the property. Here's the problem with that: you can never get equity from the property. Equity is wealth. Where did most white Americans get their wealth? It was from land. The government gave white Americans land on 4 different acts. Try to get them to come from England, they gave them land. The Homestead Act, when they wanted people to live out west, they gave 10% of the United States surface land to white Americans. 48 to 60 million white American families trace their wealth to the Homestead Act. Then they did it again, the Southern Homestead Act. That's how white Americans were able to get generational wealth through land. We, coming out of the Civil War, were not able to read and write, largely. Most lawyers would not consult with us. In some states, like North Carolina and Louisiana, they made it illegal to consult with a lawyer. And we were dealing with government-sanctioned terrorism. Our property was stolen. My plan is going to deal with us being able to get compensated for the land we have lost and being able to become land and home owners. And that also deals with the business aspects. We've built every industry in this nation, every industry. Some industry will not exist without us, okay? Agriculture on the large industrial scale, that was us.
Yeah.
The rice and the cotton, okay? The railroad industry, the telecommunications industry, a lot of those things would not exist without freemen, black Americans. We should have a share in all of them. That is my business proponent. And all of this is going to be handled through the Freedmen's Bureau, which I'm going to return. For those who don't know, the Freedmen's Bureau, because I never want to just assume people know.
Don't assume.
Okay. I want the Freedmen's Bureau was the department of the government that came into existence to make sure that black Americans coming out of slavery and whites who were not part of the Confederacy but were displaced, white Southerners, it was mainly for black Americans, receive food, shelter, housing, fair wages, jobs, land, and protection. We have more protection in the 1800s than we do now. We were a special protected class. The military was there to protect us. The Freedmen's Bureau, had they been allowed to do their job, we would not be pushing for reparations now. We would already done had it. I'm bringing the Freedmen's Bureau back. By the way, y'all, Joe Biden, right now, with the stroke of a pen, can write an executive order to bring back the Freedmen's Bureau. He doesn't do it, even though he lied, like the liar he is, like the segregationist he is, and said he will have our back. He hasn't done it, and even though Clyburn's team tells me that Congressman Clyburn has been pushing him to do it, I haven't seen it. And you know what? If out of sight, out of mind, it didn't happen.
Yeah. And I'm glad. So thank you all. And thank you, Dr. Robbie, for telling us that you're going to support his campaign, because listen, he is, first of all, he's given us a masterclass in in Black history here, in American history. And that's why I said, don't assume, because people don't know. And you know why we don't widely know, Marcel? Because we have said, just go to Congress. Dr. Robbie, for telling. Oh, sorry.
That's my cell phone. No, that's my cell phone.
Okay. We just send them to Congress and allow them to forget about us. We can't. And South Carolina is a very important state. It's a very important state. We cannot afford to be in other places in the country and think, oh, well, South Carolina is a southern state, people are poor. Nope. Nope. That's why we did the Save Mason show, because Mason, Tennessee, we typically put people in the rear view of our existence because we're not where they are. But all it takes is for any advancements against us to occur, and it becomes a movement against us across the country. So what I've heard Marcel share with us so far is that they have not had any representation from an elected official who looks like them for the last 30 years. I'm personally tired of crumbs.
I am too. We don't even get crumbs. You know what? When I was a kid, my great grandmother would bake cakes, and she would let us, eat the batter that was left over in the bowl, and we would have to get our finger and scoop it up. We aren't even getting that at this point. So my better deal for Black America is to let us see. We should be demanding this at the minimum. You don't see Hispanics, who, by the way, want to be white. Some of them are Black, some are white, some are Native American, some are Asian. Most are a mixture of different racial groups. But Mejorando La Raza is strong in the Hispanic community. So if we think they are our friends, they've already shown us they're not. And trust me, they ain't going to be. You don't see them going to these congressmen, and all these congressmen and congresswomen got to do is say, Viva La Raza, and put on a sombrero. They will be insulted by that. You don't see Asian Americans going to these congressmen and they wear a kimono and they do paper crane dance or kung fu presentation. Asian Americans will find that offensive. You don't see Native Americans going to these congressmen and congresswomen, and the congressman and congresswoman do a rain dance. Native Americans will find that offensive. Every other group goes to their congressman and congresswoman, and they demand policies. We are the only group who goes to our congressman and congresswoman and want policies. Instead, they start breakdancing and freestyling and rapping and wearing Timberlands and doing hip hop speak. And we say, man, look at us. Or they wear their hair natural. So we think they're good for us. Stop falling for symbolism. That is why I want to make sure my policies were clear. So that's my better deal for Black America part of my policies, to show us that this is the minimum that we should be demanding.
Very good. Change the whip. I like that hashtag. I'm just putting this up here because I like that hashtag. Is that a hashtag that you all are going to use? You got to
I like that. Change the whip.
I like that. Put that whip over there by the E so it can be a hashtag that starts to trend. Because I believe there are enough of us who have the freedman's mentality. And I say the freedman's mentality because in actuality, those of us who descend from slaves here in the United States, we are all freedmen, but that's not the mentality that we all have. I heard another candidate running for office in another state share that they were presenting their platform, and they had reparations as a part of their platform. And a person who looked just like you and me, Marcel, a Black man, said, I don't want reparations. It is something, it's a mental hold on our brains that make us say that we should not receive some deposit, as she said, as the other lady said. Go on.
That Black man that said that, sign the damn waiver. I'm going to come up with a waiver, sign your check over to me, because let me tell you what's going to happen. The same people who are happy on the plantation, happy field hands, and the same people who were having their communities deprived of resources and terrorized via Jim Crow and redlining, and was saying the civil rights legislation was never going to happen. Was civil rights legislation perfect? Obviously not, because if it hadn't been, I wouldn't be doing this right now. Right. They are the same people, though, who benefited from the people who went out there and fought to make it happen. Okay. I ain't going to have that happen this time around. So if you talking big talk about reparations not going to happen and you don't want it, sign the damn waiver. Right. But I do apologize. I didn't get to the other parts of my platform, so I'm just going to briefly summarize them. Go on. Education, there's multiple parts to it, but I'm going to summarize the main parts. Mm-hmm. I am going to change and reform the way that schools are funded to a way that actually will work. And this is my universal policies. But as with everything, the way schools are funded right now hurts everyone but Black American children the most. Obviously, our schools are the least funded. We have teachers that are the least experienced. We have the highest levels of attrition,
Yeah.
and we have the less resource being put into our school in the form of guidance counselors and psychologists, even though our children have the most trauma. Schools right now are funded by property tax. So if you live in a poor county like I do in Jasper County, where I've lived my entire life and was raised, and then the county next door, Beaufort County, which is a much more wealthier county. In fact, one of the wealthiest counties in South Carolina, either number one or number two, a very wealthy county. Their property tax revenue is through the roof. Our property tax revenue barely lifts off its feet. That's crazy, because that means the kids born in Jasper County, they need more resources because they're in poverty.
Yeah.
You're punishing them because of where they were born.
Yes.
That's not the way it should be. So I'm going to propose legislation where each state has a number, because South Carolina is infamous for having, and I know Dr. Robbie Akir knows this, South Carolina has written to its constitution a minimally adequate education. What?
Wow.
Minimally adequate. Yeah.
Wow.
No, it should be highest quality education. So I am writing legislation where each state, we generate an amount of funding that each county and each state needs, so every kid can have a high quality level of education. If a county can get more, great, but no county should be without what they need to get a quality education. And if that county is not able to meet that level of funding, federal legislation will go into funds that could be used by those schools in that county to close that gap. That's my education plan. And also, and I do have to mention this is near and dear to me, I have no tolerance for kids that misbehave, okay? I'm a teacher. Trust me, when I'm in my classroom, I am Tasmanian devil. And my kids know, elementary, middle school, high school, you don't want Mr. Dixon to spin and blow everyone away, okay? I told no prisoners. I'm a no-nonsense teacher. I make no apologies. I don't pull punches. Okay. However, I realize that some things, what we call misbehavior or kids acting bad, sometimes we can't always beat it out of our kids. Sometimes they're not misbehaving. They are experiencing emotional, social, mental issues that we in the Black community have not been able to have addressed, because we are still just trying to survive, and we're priced out of those things. So I am wanting to merge the Department of Labor with the Department of Social Services. And before people start saying what they know I want to say, let me finish it. I know we are social services. We think about them penalizing Black families, taking our Black children from Black parents who will be excellent parents, are excellent parents, but need help. No, I feel that we need to be proactive instead of waiting for a family to get to a point where their lives are in shambles and their children being negatively impacted. We should have social workers, psychologists, guidance counselors available in schools in a ratio that's high enough to meet the needs of the entire student body, so where teachers can focus on teaching and behavior can be handled holistically. If a kid misbehaves and it's shown not to be a manifestation of a true psychological issue, then that child needs to be dealt with. But a lot of times we're punishing what is really emotional, mental issues. And you look at all we've been through as Black Americans, it should not be a surprise that we have a lot of it. Support needs to be there for schools and for families.
Right.
I'm trying to think which one I want to talk about next. My transportation plan. Here's something I can't believe most of us don't know. I didn't know until I did research. Did you know that out of all racial and ethnic groups, I didn't know this, y'all, Black Americans are the least likely to have access to a vehicle. Did y'all know that? I'm trying to find an area, at least two, where we aren't doing worse than everyone else. If it's something negative, we are always overrepresented. Sure. That is not by coincidence. That's because we will push deep down in that hole. And every time we crawled out of that hole with our bootless straps, they came along and beat us down further in that hole. We are the least likely to own a vehicle. Wow. We are the least likely to have funds available to repair a vehicle. In my rural community, you're in New York City, and some people who live in big urban environments can't understand this, but in a rural community like mine, if you don't have a car, you are as good as living in a cardboard box. You can't get to the grocery store to buy nutritious food. We have
Right.
food deserts here, which means you go more than 10 miles, there's no grocery stores. Some areas you go more than 10 miles, there's no gas station. You can't get to parent teacher conferences. You can't get to work. You can't get to school. You can't get to the doctor. Many people lived through that. My great grandmother used to have to catch rides until she died at 101. Because if we would be at work, we couldn't take her. That's not
Right.
the way it should be. So I feel the way we have programs to help people become homeowners, there needs to be programs to help people become vehicle owners. And not just that.
Mm.
Getting a vehicle is one thing, but maintaining it and getting insurance is another. I want to partner with the private sector. A lot of people here in my small town, black, white, own auto garages. Imagine what that can do for their business if we have a program that helps people pay for vehicle maintenance and we partner with them to do it. It will be a boon to their business, a boon to my community, and it will solve several problems. And last,
That that's I'm sorry, that is radical. That's radical. But let me just
thank
share
you.
with them for those who haven't gone to his website yet. And I do encourage everybody go to his website. He shares a lot about himself. You were formerly a car salesperson and you noticed the
Yes,
poverty or the low wages of people coming in to purchase cars out of necessity. It wasn't necessarily once you looked at those salaries, right? Their income. It wasn't necessarily because, oh, I just want a car, like in so many areas in the country. It was necessity to be able to take care of themselves and their families to get to and fro to work and like you said, go to the supermarket and the necessities of life. So he comes from a place of deep concern for the lack that exists. I think that is radical. I don't know why someone hasn't already thought of it, but you get the credit because that's your idea, and I think it's
you know
wonderful.
what? Because some of
Wonderful.
them haven't lived it, and if they have lived
Mm,
it, they've forgotten
they've forgotten.
how it what it was like. I am still living these issues. Okay, I still go to work every day as a teacher in an extremely impoverished district. Dr. Rodby Akir knows my district. She knows Jasper County, extremely impoverished, the lowest performing county educationally in South Carolina. I am still living these issues. When you live it and you know that you need to get out of it, you're going to be motivated to do so. The difference is,
Mm,
I'm not trying to be the special Negro in the room who wants to
mhm,
get out of it and beat my chest and look at me, I'm made out of the hood. No,
mhm.
I want to bring all of my people out with me. And that's why I said repair Black America. Last but not
Yes.
least, Dr. Deborah, and this one is near and dear to me.
Mhm.
A better deal for thriving communities.
Yes.
I'm I'm not a nostalgic person. I'm not. I
Mhm.
always feel our better days are still ahead of us, and they are. That's how I feel. However, I do appreciate my childhood where I was living with my great grandmother, my great grandaunt's mother, father, cousins. I appreciate the oyster roasts, the low country boil, the crab. I appreciate us sometimes all just setting a fire in a metal barrel and talking around and clowning each other. I appreciate my great grand aunt, my aunt Rena, telling me all these creepy stories, helping me get to know my culture. I don't think she was doing it for that purpose, but that's what she was doing, passing down knowledge. I appreciate when I woke up, everyone around me was Black American Freeman, my family, and we looked out for each other. I didn't know what being depressed or being lonely was because even if I fought with my cousins like cats and dogs, I still had a support system. The suicide rate of Black Americans, especially boys and men, has skyrocketed. You
Yes.
know, causation, correlation,
Yeah.
they don't always go together. But one thing that has been mentioned is the breakdown of the Black community. And the Black community, they say breakdown like, oh, we just stopped marrying. We just broke down our communities. Wrong. You
Right.
destroyed our communities when you
Mm.
put railroads and highways through them, when
Mhm.
you burnt them down, when you flooded them, or when you imported drugs into them, when you did mass incarceration, when you import illegal immigrants who take the little bit of resources that Black Americans are finding to get access to, when you pass integration and you did not give us the resources we needed to keep our communities afloat, and you forced our people to go to other communities to find jobs. That's to break down the Black community. Oh, and here's an old one: gentrification. I posted on my Twitter how where I used to live, my community that is gone now, They widened the highway. Had we stayed, the highway would have been right on our front porch. That's how they destroy Black communities throughout this country. My plan, the reason why I'm so big on land, is to get our communities back. But once we get them back, we need to have the resources to sustain them. My thriving plan, my better deal for thriving communities, and this is on research that I've done. Everything I've written on my website, I researched it to the T. I don't have no policy team. I have a political strategist, but I write the policies. I do the research. So when I
Okay.
have to defend them, I'm able to do so.
Great.
Here are some things that attract violent crime: abandoned buildings, poor street lighting. Okay, just two things like that: lack of parks and open green spaces. And a lot of communities that are real with violent crimes, they tend to have a high level of abandoned buildings, low levels of street lighting, and parks and open spaces. In one community, I think it was in Cleveland, Ohio, when they added street lights and more parks, violence fell because it led to more of a communal feeling. Another thing that decreases violence in the community: having access to quality and free. And yeah, I'm gonna say the word free. I'm tired of not using that word free. Free as in government provided child care. When parents have to
Mm,
work and children are unsupervised, a lot of things take place that should not happen. Kids
absolutely.
run amok. If
Yeah.
parents had quality, affordable, or government provided quality childcare, like there should be, like my plan calls for, kids will be supervised. And that could be in the form of quality after school program, or even programs that happen before school. Another thing that decreases violence in communities, is empowering the people in those communities to address the problems there. There's a lot of talk about defund the police. Here's my approach to that. I want to hold the police accountable. There was a study done, no, it wasn't a study, it was data, use my expression, by the FBI, showing that white supremacists had infiltrated police precincts
Oh,
and
yeah.
departments throughout the entire nation.
Right.
This guy, this segregationist we have, those his people, he said he was going to have our backs. Where is his executive
That's right.
order to to do something on a federal level? Even though police precincts operate on a state level, the federal government still has a lot of influence. Don't let people tell you that they don't.
Yeah.
Where is his push to make sure that we don't have white supremacists in our ranks, which we know we do? So my legislation is calling for background checks monthly,
Mm.
and to anyone who wants to be a police officer. As a teacher, I have to make sure that I am not on a child predator, sexual predator list. You have to
Mhm.
make sure that I'm above board. Before a parent goes on a field trip with us, we check their record. And that has to be, and they have to renew it all the time, every so often. If you are a police officer, you have the right to use lethal force, you should be held to that much more accountability. Not just that. If a police officer, there has to be a standard, a federal nationwide standard for using lethal force. It can't just be, I was scared. No,
Right.
there has to be a standard. And if you are fired or suspended for impropriety, there should be a national public database, as there are for teachers. I'm a teacher. I can't take anyone's life, nor would I want to.
Right.
If an officer has a problem with being held accountable, then you don't need to be an officer. If
That's
you
right.
have the right to take someone's life if need be, but you have a problem by being held to the highest level of accountability about that, that means being scrutinized to make sure you had a good reason to do so. That's a warning sign and a red flag right there. Another thing I'm planning to do is what's called community directed public safety. That is where the police department, all they do is help the community get access to resources. So, nonprofits, I'm not going to do it as with gentrification, but nonprofits get federal funding. You have Tim Scott, who does the opportunity zones, right? But that's
Mhm.
been shown to encourage gentrification.
Oh,
My
yeah.
plan is going to make federal funding available to people who have lived in that community for 10 to 15 years. So you're not going to have some new person come along,
Oh, I
usually
love
white and
that.
wealthy, get the funds and then raise the property taxes and run our people out. No, the
Yeah.
people there often know how to solve the problems in their community, even though they didn't cause it. But what they lack are the resources, the funding, and the training. My program will give that to them. That's community directed public safety. It will provide employment for people in the community, and it will give people in the community autonomy. That's been shown to make communities safer.
Oh my goodness. This is so great, Marcel. I am so happy hearing you share your plans for our nation. You know, when you are elected to a national office, which is the US Congress, House of Representatives rather, or the United States Senate, they're making decisions not only for their districts but also for the nation. And
The
so
entire
much of what he
country.
said makes me want to have him here in Congress representing the nation for these really innovative ideas that you have. You know why they're innovative and they really shouldn't be in 2020? Because there's
Exactly.
no one doing it. There's no one doing it. And
Exactly. And they could.
they
And
could if they had the
Clyburn, I want
will.
to emphasize, he could have written legislation to do everything I'm saying right now. If you're listening, Mr. Clyburn, Congressman Clyburn, you can literally write legislation to get it done. That don't mean it'll pass, even though the Democrats have a majority. So I'm not sure why it won't. Don't try to blame Sinema and Manchin. If you wanted to get it done, you could have got it done. Before you were blaming Sinema and Manchin, you were blaming Mitch McConnell. Now that Mitch McConnell's out the picture, now you're blaming Manchin and Sinema. If it wasn't Manchin and Sinema, you will be blaming the Teletubbies. Please stop making excuses and get things done.
Yeah, yeah.
But the
I
only way I'm going to be able to get these things done is if I'm elected. And for that, it really does take donations. And I see my website there. So if people can donate, marcelforcongress.com/donate, that will help me to be able to get in the position to get these things done. Your support before I'm elected, even while I'm elected, doesn't support. Actually, I really need it once I walk through those doors of Congress.
Yes. And tell me if I have this correct. This post that I'm putting now. Listen, everyone, you know me. I have earned your
Is
trust.
donate.
Donate. I'm gonna fix that. I have earned your trust because you come back week after week, and you know that the people that I bring on the platform, Black Talk platform, it's all about what's going to build our community. Marcel, you want to type it in, please, while I'm trying
Sure.
to share with them, so that I won't be distracted and mess it up. Listen, I've been following him for months. That was months ago that he shared that tweet that we began to dialogue around. And ever since, I have been following him, and not to my peril at all. Listen, at what point do we say to ourselves, we want to pass on something to our descendants that's better than what we've had? It's crazy that I'm even saying that in 2020, because with so many people elected to Congress who look like you and me. Thank you, Rodney. He's on your page right now. And that's what I need everybody going
Thank
to his
you.
page. When you get to his page, if this is not your day, put a note to yourself in your calendar to go back when it's your day. Y'all know what I mean by your day. And make a donation to his campaign. It's not good enough for him to come here on Black Talk platform, for him to go to other platforms and talk about his great plan for our nation, for us as Black people, if we don't support him. If enough people in South Carolina don't get their eyes on him, it's a stronghold, y'all.
Yes,
Especially
it
those of
is.
you who know the church. There are strongholds. 30 years of no return for our people is a stronghold that needs to be broken. Who will have the will to support an upstart candidate who is an efficient, based upon what he has shared with us tonight, educator? I love the fact, Marcel, that you said that you don't have a policy team. You're the first order of
That's
policy
right.
setting. And it comes out of your experience, your knowledge, and guess what? Just doing the work, saving us the time. And if you don't believe him, all that he said is easily verifiable. Everybody knows how to Google. It's there. This information is correct. I gave him this hour so that he can share with those who may not have ever heard his name before, so that you will know that he is a force to be reckoned with, and you should consider him for the election of the 6th District of Congress in South Carolina. Marcel, I hope to have you back again before the primaries, which are in June 14th, did you say?
June 14th, 2022, y'all. So your donations are urgent because I work 60 hours a week. I can't canvass in a rural area. Canvassing is not like walking down the block, knocking on doors. In a rural area, canvassing looks a lot different. A lot of rural areas here, people have no trespassing signs in their yard, so I can't even go in their yard to speak with them. It has to be television, radio, newspaper, social media, and I have to rent venues that have people come to me. Clyburn is a familiar face. People, even to their own detriment, will stick to which they're familiar. But when people hear my message and they see Clyburn's record, I have yet to meet a single person, other than people who are one of his loyalists, who has said, this is what we need. But they won't be able to do that if they don't hear from me. They can only hear from me when I can pay to get my message out there.
Yeah. And that's how it goes, everyone. We all know that. We have seen campaigns go through the roof in terms of donations and to keep candidates who don't do anything for our community. I don't mind anyone else getting what they get, but isn't it time for Black people to get what we deserve? I mean, yes. Who deserves it more? And I feel so badly for anyone who is Black who would say, well, no, we all deserve. No, we deserve it more. And I don't have any bones about it. I don't have a problem with it. Nobody told me to say it. That's who I am. We deserve it more because we've never been given anything. So we could go on and on with this conversation, and you know I will. But right now, this hour was for Mr. Gregg Marcel Dixon. And I'm very pleased to have had you here as my guest tonight. Thank you so very much. And you have an open invitation, even beyond June 14th, when you're going to secure the primary vote. I'm just saying that. I can't vote, guys.
That's what they say. Well, Dr. Deborah, thank you so much. And my Twitter handle is Marcel, the digit 4, Congress. That's my Twitter handle. I'm most active on Twitter. But Dr. Deborah, no, thank you for having me. The new Black media has been beyond supportive of me. If it wasn't for y'all, no, I would have still just been a person who was originally just running symbolically to let the Congressional Black Caucus know you're not going to keep ignoring my people. Y'all are the ones and who have helped got my message across, helped get the donations that have allowed me to stay in it this long. No one expected me, outside of my supporters, been with me from day one. No one was expecting me to even get this far. So I thank y'all and thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so very welcome. Listen, everybody. Marcel, stay with me for a minute while I tee up next week's show. Listen, I love y'all. Y'all are so supportive, and I really appreciate you coming back week after week to be here with me and my guests. This was a very special guest. We are getting back into the political sphere because we know that politics move everything. They move everything, everybody. Marcel for Congress. Am I doing that right? Is that correct?
Marcel for Congress.
Like that? Is that correct? Okay, that's Rodney, correct. You see that? Okay. Rodney, I'll tag you. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you because I want to make sure you follow him because we want to also use your hashtag on the 18th when you make your announcement. Is that correct? April 18th?
Yep. National Reparations Day or Reparations Day.
Okay, I will keep following up. Next week, April is also Black Women's History Month. Okay, I know March was for women, but April is Black Women's History Month. And guess who I have? I have a former coach of mine. She is a dynamic actress. She has appeared in The Wire, but she is a full tenured professor at Howard University, and she pivoted into design. You don't want to miss my guest, Denise Hart. She is all that and then some. And so I'm lightening it up next week, but come back. And if you're on Twitter this Thursday, I will be holding my first space on what Marcel sort of touched on, emotional trauma in the Black community. I will hashtag it. I will tag you in it, Marcel, and everyone who's on Twitter, come and join our space at 7 p.m. We sort of go around all the spaces, but I would love for your support in that Twitter space on Thursday for emotional trauma. Good night, everybody. I'll see you back here next Tuesday at 7 p.m. God bless you all. Peace.
Thank you, Dr. Deborah. That emotional trauma space sounds real interesting, so I'm definitely going to plan to be there. So thank y'all. Thank you, everyone, for having me.